Hello, today we're going to take notes on how you solve for a variable when it's on both sides. So let's take an example. Now you can see you have variables on both sides of the equal sign. And the important thing is to get these variables on the same side of the equation and then combine them, combining like terms, and then solving for x. So looking at this equation, you notice that there's a fraction. You can solve this by multiplying 3/4 by x and multiplying 3/4 by -13. But you're just going to get decimals and fractions. So the easiest thing and what I recommend to students is to clear out any fractions. And to do this, we're going to multiply both sides by 4 because 4 is in the denominator. Whenever you have a fraction like 1/4 times 4, it's just going to give you 1 because the 4's multiply to be 1 and or cancel each other out. So the first thing we're going to do is clear fractions or decimals. And you're either going to be doing this by multiplying by the least common multiple of any fraction or by a power of 10. So we're going to be multiplying this both sides, because remember, whatever you do to one side, you have to do the other. We're going to be multiplying it by 4. So when I multiply 4 times this term, these 4's cancel out, and I'm just left with 3 times x minus 13. In this case, when I multiply 4 by this -2, I'm going to get -8. And if you can see, this, yes, it has larger numbers, but it's a much, easier equation to solve than this one up here because that fraction is gone. So now we just solve it like you do with any of the multi-step equations. So first we're going to distribute this 3 and this -8. Once we have every term kind of on its own, now we need to move the variables to the same side. Now I always go with the least coefficient. So in this case, the coefficient on this x is -8. -8 is less than 3. So I'm going to move this one to the other side. And to do that, I'm going to add 8x to this side, which will get rid of it on this side. But remember, whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other side. So I'm going to add 8x to this side as well. Here I'll get 11x minus 39 equals -72. Now we've solved problems like this before. So now to isolate x, I'm going to add 39 to both sides of the equation. So because -39 plus 39 adds up to be 0, we're just left with the 11x equals, and then here we have -72 plus 39, which is going to give us -33. Now here we have x multiplied by 11, so we're going to divide it by 11 to get rid of that 11, and whatever we do to one side, we have to do to the other side. So we'll get x equals -3. Now typically on assignments like this, I would have you come over here and write on your own the different steps. Okay. So let's review the steps that you should have written over on the left side. It says multiply both sides by the least common multiple of the denominator. There was only one, so that was pretty easy. We just multiplied by 4. Next, you have to distribute if there's any distribution that needs to happen. And in this case, we had to do it twice. Then you're going to move the variable to one side of the equation. And I like to move the one with the least coefficient. So that was -8. So we added 8x to both sides of the equation. And then once we get here to this step, this is just like a normal two-step equation, and you isolate the variable. First, by getting rid of anything that's added or subtracted to the term with the variable in it, and then next by multiplying or dividing, in this case, by the term that's being multiplied by x. And we get -3. Let's look at an example where there's a decimal and you have to clear the decimal first. So we're going to look at the equation 0.2r plus 0.75 equals 0.5r. So in this case, if you notice, we have a decimal in each term, and the largest one is right here, where it goes out to hundredths place. So that's the key, that we're going to multiply to clear the decimal by 100. Because if we multiply by 100, it's going to move this decimal over 2 places, because there's 2 zeros on 100, and that's what we want. So remember, whatever we do to one side, we have to do to the other. So we're going to multiply both sides by 100. Now, look here. This just looks like a normal distribution problem, right? You have to distribute this 100 to both terms within the parentheses. So this becomes 20r plus 75 equals 50r. And now, even though these are larger numbers, these numbers are a lot easier to work with than decimals. Because with decimals, you got to line up the decimals, you got to make sure that you remember where the decimal is, and to type it into your calculator if you're using a calculator. So it's not difficult. You can definitely solve for r without multiplying by 100. There's just sometimes more places to make errors. Okay. So once again, we want to move up here. Okay. So instead of multiplying by the lowest common multiple, we multiplied by a power of 10. So this was 10 to the second power. But we're going to follow the same steps after that. So there is no distribution that we have to do, so we have to move the variable to the same side. In this case, 20r is the least coefficient on r, so I'm going to subtract 20r from both sides. (20r minus 20r is 0, so that's cleared, and we're left with 75 on this side. So 50r minus 20r gives us 30r. And now we're multiplying r by 30. So to get rid of that 30, we are going to divide both sides by 30. And we get r equals 2.5. So just like we did up here, go ahead and write the steps that you went through to solve this equation. So you should have written multiply by 10 to some power. In this case, we use 10 to the second power. Then you move the variable to one side and isolate the variable. For today's summary, choose an equation either from your textbook or from one of the problems we did not do in class from your worksheet and solve it in the summary location. Thank you.